Hello everyone, welcome to Clickheads. I'm Eddie the Chump, and today we're going to be talking about cheaters, devs' responses to the moving and shooting issues in the game, hitbox issues, and more. There's quite a lot to get through, so let's just dive right in. First things first, let's talk about cheaters and the Vanguard anti-cheat. Over the last few days, since Ranked has hit the Valorant beta, there have been quite a few clear examples of cheaters ruining high-level games. Let me play you some clips from a game in which Flom and Seagull had to contend with one.
Dude, oh my god, they griefed him so hard. They said that they got him stuck and they're just spamming him. Oh my god.
Wait, what?
Stream right now. I just gave them 10 subs though.
Yeah,
Dude, that's fucking hilarious, bro. They're fucking. He can't get out, dude.
Wait, where is he? Where is he?
Don't
shoot him all.
Don't shoot him. Don't shoot him.
One enemy.
No!
Oh my.
No way.
They had him pinned in the corner, dude.
Now, the great thing is that enemy team who have the cheater on their side take it upon themselves to essentially ruin the game for the cheater, body blocking him in spawn, hitting them with their own utility, and not allowing them to hamper the game. Essentially, they worked against their own self-interest and nullified the game result, which is amazing to see. As Seagull noted in another part of that video, this is similar to how cheaters were handled in Overwatch, with both teams essentially agreeing to play the game out to a draw, robbing the cheater of their entire reason for playing. Now, this is not an isolated issue. Various community figures have been experiencing cheaters in their games, and I have had a few matches where I was at least a bit suspicious of enemy players. Riot's response has been to manually ban these cheaters as quickly as possible, with some being banned in the same game if it went on long enough. This raised a few points. Firstly, Vanguard is clearly still being developed, and at this point I think it's safe to say hacker developers have found a way around whatever they have implemented up until this point. This is just the nature of this kind of thing, I'm afraid. There isn't a lot Riot can do in this eternal game of cat and mouse. Vanguard stops a cheat, then it's worked around, then Vanguard will be updated again, and the cheaters will have to work around that, and so on and so on. This is all Riot can do, and to be frank, they should be commended that they're being so snappy with their manual bans on top of their automated systems. It's a real shame that games will always have to deal with this, but that's just the nature of online FPS. Riot have to just keep developing Vanguard and updating it, with this beta providing them with very valuable data on how the cheats are actually working. I know that's scant consolation for those who have their games ruined, but this was always going to be a period of adjustment. Cheaters will be in Valorant when it's released, but Riot seem motivated and up to the task of limiting this cancer as much as possible moving forwards, which is more than can be said for some developers. COD Warzone. I haven't yet heard of some more rigorous account verification methods that could be employed that can help limit the cheater populations of other free-to-play games, as people are less likely to cheat if it could cost them their accounts and their skins and the ability to make new ones in the future. Hardware banning is a term that gets bandied about a lot, but if a cheater is extremely dedicated, they know how to do things like spoof their MAC address and so on, so that method will be unlikely to deter those players. But it could deter most of the cheater population, as it's my opinion that there's a huge part of that cheater population that does so just because of how easy it can become and how low risk it can be if devs don't really take the steps necessary. Riot isn't one of those devs though. The best we can hope for is cheaters to be rare. Eradicating it completely is almost impossible, sad as that is to say. Moving on, there have been two stories that impact the whole peeker's advantage / moving and shooting accuracy topic surfaced recently. The first is this very popular Reddit post by Snapcut505 in which they demonstrate how forgiving the headshot hitbox is in Valorant. I'll play you the clip as I talk about this so you can see it for yourself. The first thing I want to say is forgiving hitboxes are not new. They actually feature quite prominently in a lot of online FPS, and if you look at them in isolation they can appear quite shocking. This clip does show the player hitting Jet in the upper neck and getting a headshot, and the uninitiated might jump to a conclusion of, oh wow, that's really wonky, it shouldn't be like that. Well, here's why this has been a thing in games for a very long time. When you play networked games, you are never, I repeat, never seeing a one-to-one image of where an enemy is or isn't. I talked about this in my Peeker's Advantage video, but there is always some interpolation of where you're seeing a target on your screen. If there wasn't, then whoever had the lowest ping would just completely dominate. Hitboxes like these are used to help out with this smoothing of enemies' placement and network traffic. If they weren't there, nobody would ever hit anything. Now that's not to say this example isn't a bit bit excessive, it does look it, but I just wanted to dispel the myth that hitboxes are always one-to-one. They're not. They are not always model accurate either, for a different reason, and that's because different models of agents are obviously different shapes, and if hitboxes are model accurate, there could be an advantage to picking one agent over another purely based on a smaller or larger hitbox, irrespective of their kits. Hitboxes have to be uniform for all the characters, even if there are some agent models that might make you think differently. Sage's top knot, for example, isn't part of her hitbox, which can be confusing and has actually got me killed because I've shot on it, hit nothing, and the Sage player has turned around and killed me. There have been games where this wasn't the case, like Gears of War, where because the female characters were smaller, the hitboxes were also giving them a clear advantage. It was so bad in that game that in the esport, you were limited to only one female character per team, with a couple of other characters counting as female, even though they weren't because their models were so stripped back. Big Rig Dizzy and Savage Cantus, I'm looking at you here. Maybe the headshot hitboxes do need a bit of tweaking, but the clip is showing you the worst possible scenario. The shooting player is right next to the jet. From across the map or medium range, you wouldn't really notice this as much. I know it looks bad, maybe Riot are tuning this after it blew up on Reddit, but larger hitboxes are partially there to help everyone. It's not like you have this and your enemies don't, so think about that aspect of it too. Next up, we're going to talk about Riot dev Nicky Wu and what they had to say about movement accuracy. I'll play the clip for you now.
Will shift walking always have the accuracy that it has right now? Shift walking, movement accuracy, or accuracy within movement states are subject to being changed. They're not set in stone. Do I agree with walking accuracy? I'm okay, or like I guess I sign up for the notion that walking or accuracy doesn't need to be binary, in the sense that, you know, you don't need to be perfectly still to be perfectly accurate, or like perfectly still. I think you need to be perfectly still to be perfectly accurate, but I don't think any amount of movement should make it so that you're wildly inaccurate. And so I think that we can be, personally, I think we can be harsher on what movement penalties are currently, but I don't think we want to be in a world where like moving moving can never be a viable tactic even when up close. I do think we have room to make more of the mid-range like times you die while to a moving shooter, like to reduce that amount by a lot. But you know, making it, if we get to, you know, there might become to a point where it's like, hey, if you're moving, you just can't shoot. You might as well just do that.
Now, it feels like he's responding to the Summit 1G clip that I also used in my Pika's Advantage video. I said then that Pika's Advantage in Valorant was likely caused by a few issues, not just one, and that laxer moving mechanics might be contributing. I also said that Valorant isn't CSGO. It doesn't have to be as punishing as that game on moving and shooting. Nicky Wu essentially outlines what I thought the devs felt about this. They do actually want moving and shooting to be a thing to a certain extent, and to be fair, he does say that in his personal opinion, the medium range accuracy could be toned down quite a bit, and that they are looking at this and discussing it internally all the time. I agree with Nicky, actually. I think they're taking exactly the right approach. This is, after all, a beta. This is the time to give real feedback and make informed decisions. That's what all our playtime is, in effect, the best form of data possible for Riot. Because Ranked is out, people might not see it that way, but in reality, we're helping to iron out all these issues in time for the game's full release. I mean, he does clearly acknowledge that moving and shooting is a bit too good at ranges you might not expect. But don't lie to yourself, pros move and shoot in CSGO too, and it was only recently that crab walking sprays got significantly nerfed. Some of the most celebrated pro players of all time are players going through a smoke with a flash and crouch moving spray downs of multiple people. I do think moving and shooting does need to be toned down, but I respect Riot's approach and am willing to give them time to get it right. I think that's fair. Next up, we've got a really interesting bit of feedback from Sal Gorozzo concerning map design. There has been a bit of grumbling about how complicated the map design is in Valorant, particularly when it comes to how many spots defenders have at their disposal on bomb sites. Some of the community have described this as being to the game's detriment, that there are too many places to get shot from to be manageable when taking a site. This is what Sal said to a question to that effect on his stream.
Nano,
Yeah,
I mean,
but
we're
is
always
someone
keeping
gonna
an
do
eye on
that
that
by
and how it's
default?
playing. There is a reason for it being that way, given how much flush utility and recon utility is in the
Plus,
game.
the thing actually goes
Once
pretty far,
teams
I think.
start getting really
It might
proficient
not
at using
frag
that on
at the
attacker
range,
side,
but as long as the directionality, like,
it ends up being really
Hubbard's
helpful
got
having
good
those
dog ears, it
corners.
can
We've
point it in the
had
right
versions
direction.
of the map without those corners,
should
and it
jump
gets
in
really
pretty hard.
difficult
I
to,
think one thing we should
play any
decide
sort of
on is, like,
spots
if we're contesting
with all the
short
recon
or not.
tools and flushing tools.
Because
Now, from Riot's perspective, this design philosophy is actually needed because of the massive amount of utility that can be deployed. There's simply too many recon and flush tools at attackers' disposal to make defending simplified sites viable. And what I find really interesting is that they play-tested simpler versions of the maps to find this out. Now, there's a few things going on here. One, hardly anyone has really got to grips with using utility properly aside from the devs and the very, very top teams. This is why the devs could handily beat some of the best players in the world in show matches early on. So in your solo queue matches, you're not going to be having the most coordinated site takes in the universe. I think that's fair to say, at least while the game is still so new. So when you do try and take a site, it might feel like it's impossible to manage, but that will change as your own experience and that of the community becomes more developed. Secondly, a lot of this feedback comes from players that aren't quite at the absolute top level. Everyone is still learning, and I trust Sal and his team to get this right. If you don't know who Sal is, he's designed some of the best changes to CSGO maps ever, and that's the reason why he now works at Valorant. He's also a former pro and is the top rank in the game. The Valorant dev team is not like other dev teams. They have some serious in-game talent and are 100% going to be better than 99% of the players complaining about the maps. I'm sorry, but I'm also not sorry for saying that. It's just facts. Hard game is hard. We're going to have to learn how to play properly. Next up is some potentially very good news. It seems that confirmation of some sort of respawn deathmatch mode has been found within the game files. The Twitter account Valorant Leaked posted this picture of a string supposedly found in those game files, and it mentions Team Deathmatch. Now, I will be making a video offering some genuine feedback to Riot on certain things I think the game needs, but a robust DM mode is for sure one of those features. In CS, because it's much more open source than Valorant is, there are literally thousands of community-made maps and modes to help you practice. The best and most common of those is a DM server. Usually 16 to 18 players, everyone against everyone for like 25 minutes at a time, with all the weapons being available. What this allows players to do is warm up and practice their mechanics against real players, which is very, very useful. The hard mode skills test is great in Valorant, but bots never move like other players do, and crucially, they don't shoot back. Now, in case you didn't know, CSGO doesn't have a pure deathmatch mode. It has Team Deathmatch, which in my opinion is nowhere near as useful because you don't get the same amount of gunfight reps as you would if it was just deathmatch and therefore free-for-all rules, and it does look like Valorant might be following suit there, which is still better than nothing, but what the game really needs is that next step. I mean, I'll play TDM for sure, but as a practice tool, it's just not going to be as efficient. At least TDM in Valorant will be 128 tick, not the 64 tick peasant servers of CSGO official matchmaking. Now that's about it for the moment. Let me know how you feel about the topics I talked about today. I'm sure I will have rustled some jimmies at some point. I really hope you enjoyed the video and found the info useful. If you like the content on this channel, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you get notified when we upload. Until next time.